Somehow it's already August, so today it's time to go through every movie I watched in July. First, I watched A Quiet Place Part 2. I made a versus video between this and its predecessor, so to hear my full thoughts, make sure to watch that video. Next, I watched Glass. Once I see more M. Night Shyamalan films, including his new film Old, I'll make some sort of video about his films, which will include this. Glass is a film I am utterly obsessed with right now, and it is almost a masterpiece in my opinion. Not quite a masterpiece, so that's why it gets a 9.9 out of 10. It's very close though, one rewatch could make it a 10 easily. Then I watched The Tomorrow War. The Tomorrow War is a fun film with great performances from especially Chris Pratt, J.K. Simmons, and Sam Richardson. I think that the score is pretty good and matches what happens on screen. It is pretty forgettable, but it's good for the film. Chris Pratt is mostly known for comedy, and while this film was pretty funny sometimes, it got really heartfelt too, which shows that Chris Pratt can do more than comedy. It's got a cool time travel concept and led to some really cool shots and action scenes. The visuals are pretty great, and I love the way these aliens look. This movie is free on Amazon Prime with a subscription, so I recommend checking it out if it sounds like something you would enjoy. On Independence Day, I watched Independence Day. Obviously, this movie has as much 90s cheese as Provolone, but it is also just as fun as you would expect. The plot made for some amazing Star Wars-esque action and some really cool moments all around, and surprisingly, the special effects are pretty decent too. The cast is pretty phenomenal, featuring Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, and Randy Quaid. I was hoping for more of Will Smith because he was advertised as the main character, but he was just one of the main characters and not in it nearly as much as I thought and hoped so. I also love seeing Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum interact with each other because they both have so much charm, which made it really fun to see them on screen. Sometimes the plot got a little old and repetitive, but it always picked up and did something at least a little new and made it very enjoyable. I think that this is a really good blockbuster that all movie fans should see at least once. On the 7th, I watched Hacksaw Ridge. I found a DVD of this movie for $5, and I really wanted to see it, so I decided to buy it even without knowing if I liked it or not, and thankfully, I loved it. Mel Gibson impressed me again with another amazing war movie. This and Saving Private Ryan easily show the worst of war in film in my opinion, though I actually like this one quite a bit more. Andrew Garfield was perfectly cast as Desmond Doss, and I'm not just saying that. His performance felt so genuine and was one of his best. He's in such great movies like this, Silence, and The Social Network, and every performance he gives is phenomenal. He is easily one of my favorite actors. Vince Vaughn was also great and played his character amazingly as well. I think that this film is very powerful and it is an amazing true story that works on screen so well. This is one of my new favorite war movies and I'm very glad that I own it now. The same day I watched Frankenstein. Two things before I start talking about this movie. One, this was my 750th film, so that's pretty cool, even though now at the time of filming this, I'm around 775, so that doesn't really mean anything anymore. And two, this is the oldest movie I've ever seen, as of right now. Speaking of old, I think it is crazy that this movie is nearly 100 years old. It still holds up for the most part. Some moments are cheesy because of its age, which I can forgive, but a lot of it really worked. I loved the atmosphere of it, which is eerie and creepy, and the black and white adds to its eeriness. Boris Karloff is iconic as Frankenstein's monster, and there are lines of dialogue that are very quotable and iconic as well. I'm a horror newbie, though I still really enjoyed this. I'm glad it wasn't a 2.5-hour film, because if it was, I probably would have felt bored, but it was only a bit over an hour, so I enjoyed it all. Watching this makes me excited to watch Universal's other classic monster movies, and I would recommend this to any classic movie fans. The next day, I watched Damien Chazelle's First Man. I wasn't expecting First Man to be a masterpiece like Damien Chazelle's other films, Whiplash and La La Land, but I wasn't expecting it to be this bland. It's kind of exactly how you would expect a film about Neil Armstrong to be, and it isn't as good as other space films. Ryan Gosling is great as Neil Armstrong, Damien Chazelle's direction is great as well, and the special effects in space looked good, but the plot wasn't portrayed in a way that made me really invested. There were some moments that stood out amongst others, but overall a really mixed film for me. Not bad, but not great. With films like these, I don't have a lot to say because they're mostly just okay. Then in the theater, I watched Black Widow. I just ranked all 24 of the MCU films, so please check out that video to hear my thoughts on this film. After that, I watched The Boss Baby Family Business. It wasn't as horrible as I expected, but still so stupid and bad. It had some really heartfelt moments, honestly, and wasn't as much of a cash grab as it looked like. The message was decent, though it was very forced. It actually said something good enough, and I liked some of it, but whenever it cut back to the new baby Tina, I just got less interested and less interested. I hate the main plotline and the ninja babies, but the side plotline about the dad and the daughter was just fine. The rest was just bad. Jeff Goldblum was great, though. On the 9th, I watched Zombieland. Zombieland is getting a very solid 8.5 out of 10. It was way more fun and entertaining than I expected, and I even went in thinking it was going to be fun and entertaining. It is pretty hilarious and has some pretty exciting, but still funny, moments. My favorite part of it was easily Emma Stone and Jesse Eisenberg. Both of them were just so great and worked well together. Emma Stone has a pretty huge acting range because her performances are great in all sorts of films such as musicals, dramas, comedies, comic book films, and more. Woody Harrelson was pretty great, but I think Jesse Eisenberg and Emma Stone were better. This film went by so fast, maybe because it was pretty short, but it was very enjoyable. Bill Murray's cameo was absolutely brilliant and hilarious. The joke Bill Murray made about his only regret being Garfield was so funny and smart. I really did not like the look of this film, however, because most of the colors looked muted, but thankfully that didn't take away from my enjoyment of the film. There were some certain shots that looked pretty good, but certain ones that looked dull. Some of the makeup and costuming wasn't my favorite either, but that is really nitpicky, honestly. Those are my only flaws. This is my favorite zombie movie so far. Maybe Shaun of the Dead will replace it once I see it, right after I get done filming this video. Maybe I'll like Zombieland Double Tap more when I watch it. We'll see what happens, but I loved Zombieland. Then I watched America the Motion Picture. This movie was so stupid. I'm just glad it didn't take itself seriously. If it did, then it would be the stupidest movie ever, no doubt. It's self-aware and it knows how stupid it is, and it fully embraces that. The jokes are honestly hit or miss, but some of them were really funny. Seeing a buff, chainsaw-wielding George Washington fight these Britons with the most violence absolutely possible for an animated film is just so funny for some reason. This doesn't have amazing character development, plot lines, or anything like that, just really fun and funny moments. It was really cool to see hand-drawn animation again in 2021, even though it isn't the greatest in this. My biggest negatives are that this is making fun of history kind of offensively, and the villain was horrible and annoying. Next, I watched Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. This was insane, and I loved it. It has a phenomenal cast, including Leonardo DiCaprio, who gave a phenomenal performance, Mark Ruffalo, and Ben Kingsley. This is the best of the Martin Scorsese films I've seen so far, and was phenomenal. The twist at the end was so smart and mind-blowing, and I actually cried at the end. After the big twist came, there was a flashback about Teddy, and it showed him finding out about something really sad, and Leonardo DiCaprio acted exceptionally, which just made me cry, seeing him cry about what happened. I'm sorry if that didn't make any sense. I tried to word it without spoiling. I was really interested in the mystery about Shutter Island, which made for some really great suspense. This embraces the thriller genre as best as possible without crossing into the horror genre, and it is great. Twists and turns are some of my favorite parts in film because they just get my adrenaline going, which I love, and this film didn't disappoint with that. I don't think this is quite a 10 out of 10 because I have a couple nitpicks with it, but I don't feel like talking about them because I like this film too much to care. This movie is outstanding, despite my few minor nitpicks. After that, I watched The Lighthouse. This is one of the strangest and craziest films I have ever seen. Seeing those men lose their sanity at the lighthouse after time is so weird, and the performances almost make it disturbing. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson give some of their best performances in this, and it all seems so real. This was also my first A24 film, and a good one at that. I don't really know how I feel about this film, I just know that I really liked it. It's a slow burn, yes, but it was also almost funny considering how crazy these men were at the end. This is in my top 10 of 2019 right now, but that might change once I see more films. The 3:4 aspect ratio and the black and white colors makes this film very weird and creepy the whole way through. I don't know what to think about the ending of this film. This movie as a whole is just crazy and great. On the 16th, I watched Space Jam: A New Legacy. I made a versus video between the two Space Jam movies, so please go check out that video up in the iCard once this video is done. I've noticed that this movie has been getting a lot of hate, but I think that it was really good. The next day, I watched Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story. With Marriage Story, 2019 just keeps showing me how great of a year for film it was. There's so many great films, and this is one of them. From the sequel trilogy, we didn't really see Adam Driver doing his best, but with this film, he delivers his best performance in my opinion. His acting chops are shown greatly in this film, and I believed almost everything coming from him and Scarlett Johansson. The argument scene is the most emotional scene in the film, which was acted phenomenally. All of the performances in this were great, even from the side characters. The cinematography is nothing special, but the script is amazing. All of the dialogue is so good, and I felt sad for the characters because of some of it. Marriage Story is a film worth your time, but not something I'm going to be coming back to anytime soon. Then I watched Nobody. So I came into this almost completely blind, and it was pretty good. The performances from Bob Odenkirk and Christopher Lloyd were great, and there were several really cool action scenes. The standout is the one on the bus for me. That one had really good choreography, and it was also kind of funny. I really loved the score because it played a lot of classic songs, which was funny too. The film as a whole was pretty funny, and there were some pretty funny jokes. The writing was really good too, and makes me want to watch the John Wick films because this and John Wick have the same writer. The main character was pretty likable, and this film moved by fast. It has a pretty short runtime, and it was very enjoyable. It isn't one of the best of 2021 like some people say it is in my opinion, but still pretty good, and I recommend it. After that, I watched A League of Their Own. The acting was good, and there were some quotable lines, though it was maybe a little bit too long. I wasn't fully invested in the film, but it was a fun little baseball movie that I kind of liked. I don't really have that much to say. Next, I watched Uncut Gems. In Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler delivers his career best performance. He's landed a lot of bad roles, but no matter what, he is an amazing actor. I don't think I've ever seen Adam Sandler cry in a film before this, but he did such a good job at it in this, which was so believable, and I started getting pretty sad for his character. The cinematography is amazing, and this is just another film from 2019 that is great. This was my second A24 film, and it isn't as good as the first one I saw, but there are so many great things about it. In the comments, please feel free to recommend any A24 film that I haven't seen so I can hopefully watch them soon. As of now, I have seen Uncut Gems, The Lighthouse, and Lady Bird. Adam Sandler honestly saved his career with this, and hopefully in the future he gets cast in more films like this. Whenever Idina Menzel was on screen, I would immediately think Elsa, which probably isn't a good thing considering how different this film is compared to Frozen. Adam Sandler is the saving grace to this film and makes it great. This isn't a rewatchable film at all, but it is very good. On the 20th, I watched Gunpowder Milkshake. Easily my favorite thing about Gunpowder Milkshake, besides its really cool title, is its visual style. The neon colors look very good in the action sequences, and this movie looks absolutely amazing. Karen Gillan plays her character very well alongside stars like Angela Bassett and Paul Giamatti. One of the standouts is actually Chloe Coleman, who gives a great performance at a young age. The choreography is great, even though this film is sometimes kind of messy. The action sequence in the bowling alley towards the beginning of the film was quite good, but it did feel messy with some of the quick cuts. This is a story we've seen many times before on screen, and they don't do anything different with it. I don't mind that, but it would be even better if it was more original. The relationship between Gillan's character and her mother didn't come to much after the opening scene. Regardless, the two actresses did do well when it was touched upon throughout the film. The entire film was made entertaining because of its fun fight scenes and colors, and some of the cheesiness to the film made it even more enjoyable. Overall, the look of the film, the best part, and the fun characters and fight scenes make up for the generic script. The next day, I watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I understand why some people think this is phenomenal. I personally don't see the 10 out of 10 phenomenal masterpiece in this film, but I do see a really great film. It's a classic spaghetti western that I'm glad I've seen now, but not one I'm going to come back to as much as, say, Three Amigos. I know it's not a very good comparison, but that's the first one that came to mind. Ennio Morricone's score is absolutely brilliant, enhancing every scene to another level. The final showdown in the graveyard was already great, but the score made it more epic and it just put a smile on my face. Clint Eastwood's remarkable performance as Blondie was so good and makes me excited to watch the other films in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy. Also, yes, I watched the final film in the trilogy first. I've heard they are only loosely related, so that's good, but this was still the final one made in the trilogy. For 1966, the explosions looked really good, probably because they used practical effects, which would explain that, but the explosions and gunfights looked real. Clint Eastwood did great, but the men who played Tuco and Angel Eyes did great too. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a film I'd wanted to see for a long time, and it didn't disappoint me because I went in without knowing much about it. After that, I watched the Care Bears movie. I don't know whether I should be more embarrassed that I actually watched this or that I actually really liked this. When I was a toddler, I used to think that this movie was scary and had really suspenseful action, and even though that's not even close to being true, it is still really good. I don't think I would like this if I didn't have nostalgia for it, but nostalgic movies really hit different for me. I recommend this, just know that it is exactly what you would expect, but sometimes kind of dark for the Care Bears. If you think about it, it's actually about a guy that is slowly losing his sanity after realizing nobody loved him in the world, so he tried to ruin everyone else's lives with the help from an evil spirit that looks like the Wicked Witch's head on steroids. That's pretty dark for a movie called The Care Bears Movie. I'm not ashamed that I watched this because real men love Care Bears. Next, I rewatched Knives Out. Absolutely amazing. The exposition scene at the end is pure brilliance. On the 29th, I watched 10 Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane is a thrilling film that has a simple premise but is executed in an effective way. It is so intense and the entire film is claustrophobic and eerie. There are moments I didn't see coming and some satisfied me while others didn't. I think that the last 5 to 10 minutes weren't necessary. The movie wasn't too long. The things included in those 5 to 10 minutes just weren't needed. I actually didn't watch the first Cloverfield film, but that's okay because they have no relation to each other from what I've heard. John Goodman gave a fantastic performance that made his character at times creepy, but at times likable. The script was great, and I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. I had some questions that were left unanswered, which made me confused sometimes. There are some things that could have been changed, but 10 Cloverfield Lane is still a very solid film. After that, I watched Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder is an unbelievably stupid film from the start, but it is also hilariously stupid and very fun. Having the characters film a movie and then the stuff in the movie actually started happening in real life for them was absolutely hysterical, and the actors pulled it off nicely. I'm not normally a fan of Ben Stiller, unfortunately, but in this he was very good. I wasn't aware that he was a director as well as an actor, so having him direct this was cool. Jack Black delivers the jokes amazingly as always, and Robert Downey Jr. gave my favorite performance. Cast is absolutely phenomenal, featuring Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Robert Downey Jr., Tom Cruise, Matthew McConaughey, Bill Hader, Jason Bateman, and even a cameo from Tobey Maguire. The ending when the movie inside this movie called Tropic Blunder won the Oscar, it was so funny because in real life, Tropic Blunder sounds horrible. I guess you could say Ben Stiller's character had an arc, not a big one, but big enough. My main gripe with the movie is the villains. They are very forgettable and I didn't like them. Some of the side characters were also not very well developed too. The blood effects looked very real and made for some really funny jokes about what is and isn't a prop. I can't fully recommend this movie because I can see some people really hating it, but I did have a really fun time. The next day, I watched About Time. About Time puts a spin on the normal romance tale by adding time travel into the mix, which makes it more funny. Domhnall Gleeson's performance was pretty great and much better than his in Star Wars, and his character Tim did some pretty funny things with the time travel. The acting performances all around were great, but Domhnall Gleeson's was the best. The comedy was a lot better than I expected, and the whole film is very feel-good. There were some dramatic moments and sad moments that were fit nicely into the film as well. About Time is a heartwarming rom-com, and I think it is pretty great. On opening day in the theater, I watched Jungle Cruise. This was a great movie in my opinion, but I did have some nitpicks, so if you would like, go check out my review. And finally, I watched Lady Bird. Lady Bird is my least favorite A24 film that I've seen so far, but it is still very good. I didn't find myself relating to the character Lady Bird like so many people do, and her character wasn't particularly likable, but something about her was so realistic and understandable, even without being relatable. Greta Gerwig's directing here is great, and I'm really excited to watch Little Women because of it. I really love Timothée Chalamet in this, and that's another reason I'm excited to watch Little Women. The look of this film is gorgeous with all of the colors used. It has a very light camera lens, which is appealing to the eye. Besides Timothée Chalamet, let's be honest, we all love him as an actor. All the side characters I didn't find interesting or compelling. There were decent enough emotional moments that were fine, and decent enough moments of comedy that were just fine as well. This movie is good, but not a masterpiece. And that's what I watched in July. This month was super busy for me, and it took me a while to make this video, but thanks for watching, and until then, stay tuned and subscribe to Cinema Ranks.